Coffee was so influential in early Turkish culture that the word for breakfast literally translates to before coffee, and the word brown translates to the color of coffee. The longest recorded living animal is a ocean quahog clam, which was recorded at a staggering 507 years. Second place goes to a Greenland shark at 392 years, followed by a bowhead whale at 211 years. Humans only make up 48% of users on the internet. The other 52% of web traffic are bots. When you're buried 6 feet down in soil and without a coffin, an average adult body normally takes 8 to 12 years to decompose to a skeleton. When Jackie Chan was 18, he got into a street fight with bikers where shortly after he noticed a piece of bone sticking out of his knuckle. He tried spending an entire day pushing it back in until he realized that it wasn't his bone but the other guy's tooth. In Moscow, stray dogs have learned to commute from the suburbs to the city, scavenge for food, then catch the train home in the evening. For less than the cost of a Ferrari, you can buy a renovated Boeing 737. By the time you are to, your brain is already 80% the size of an adult's. The famous torrent site Pirate Bay once tried to buy its own island to make their own country with no copyright laws. In Siberia, there's a toilet located 8,500 feet 2,591 meters above sea level at the top of the Altai Mountains. It serves the workers of an isolated weather station and is known as the world's loneliest toilet. Germans were the first country to realize the link between smoking and lung cancer. Hitler was even one of the first ones to lead the anti-smoking campaign. Grammatical pedantry syndrome is a form of OCT in which sufferers feel the need to correct every grammatical error they see. Every year, the Netherlands sends 20,000 tulip bulbs to Canada to thank them for their help in the Second World War. In the Curve Gallery at the Barbican Centre in London, there's something called the Rain Room, where, through the use of sensors, rain falls everywhere in the room except for where you're walking. There are 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte, and most neuroscientists estimate that the human brain can hold between 10 and 100 terabytes of information. Twilight was rejected 14 times before it was accepted. When you see an advertisement of a watch, it's almost always 10 past 10. One of the oldest living creatures on Earth was believed to be Adwaita, a giant tortoise from India who was believed to be 255 years old before passing away in 2006. There are Wizard of Oz-inspired shoes that get you home when clicking your heels together using a GPS system. Side note, the author of the novel created part of the name of the book when he was looking at a filing cabinet and saw the letters OZ. Ocology is the science of housekeeping. Arnold Schönberg suffered from triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. He died at 13 minutes from midnight on Friday the 13th. One of the ingredients needed to make dynamite is peanuts. In 2012, HealthPoint Biotherapeutics of Fort Worth, Texas, developed a portable, spray-on skin that can heal severe wounds much faster. The spray-on skin is actually made up of skin cells and suspended in a mixture of different types of proteins. Instead of its gross national product, Bhutan measures its development and prosperity by its gross national happiness. It's been doing this since 1971 and is the only country to do so. Dogs love the herb anise the same way that cats love catnip. In fact, anise is the scent on the artificial rabbit that is used in greyhound races to get the dogs to run. In the early 1930s, Warner Brothers began producing animated shorts specifically for the purpose of promoting music owned by the company. They were called Looney Tunes. At one point during the 1985 Geneva summit, Reagan and Gorbachev agreed to pause the Cold War in case of an alien invasion. Oysters make pearls so that they can feel better. When a grain of sand or debris gets stuck in their bodies, they ease the pain and irritation by coating it with multiple layers of nacre. It's a mineral that lines the inside of their shells, and thus, a pearl begins to form. South Korea, despite having completed the transition to digital broadcast ATSC in 2012, still maintains analog broadcasts near its borders for North Koreans watching South Korean TV secretly. Seth MacFarlane once had to show an early episode of Family Guy to a pair of rabbis because Fox executives thought it was anti-Semitic. Despite the rabbi's approval, it wasn't broadcasted for 3 years after it was completed. The Federal Trade Commission states that your eye care provider must give you a copy of your contact lens and eyeglass prescriptions, whether or not you ask for them. The only recorded instance of a cavalry capturing an enemy's ships occurred in the unusually cold winter of 1795, when most of the waterways in northern Europe froze over and the French cavalry was able to charge out onto a frozen port to capture the Dutch fleet stranded there. In 2013, a researcher at University of Washington managed the first human-to-human brain interface through the internet by wearing a cap and playing a video game. When he wanted to shoot a missile, he thought fire and another researcher's finger across the campus moved involuntarily and pressed the fire button. The oldest continuously serving navy in the world belongs to Portugal. The Seminole tribe of Florida is the only Native American group that has never officially been conquered by the U.S. government. About 795 miles of land, Bertal, between Egypt and Sudan remains unclaimed by either nation. This is the only piece of unclaimed land outside of Antarctica. Of the 270 moon rocks the U.S. gifted to the world, 180 are currently unaccounted for. Tolkien considered languages the foundation of his work. He created the stories for his languages, not the other way around. Upon their return to Earth, the Apollo 11 crew members were quarantined in a special facility for 21 days just to be sure they didn't bring back any germs from the moon. Clint Eastwood bought David Webb Peoples' script for The Unforgiven in 1976 and sat on it for 15 years until he was old enough to play the lead role of William Money. Early humans used to run their prey to death. This method of hunting was called persistence hunting. A genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva causes human tissue to turn into bone. Sufferers are slowly imprisoned by their own skeletons. Sand from the Sahara is blown by the wind all the way to the Amazon, recharging its minerals. The desert literally fertilizes the rainforest. After seeing Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, the astronauts of Apollo 8, the first manned mission to leave Earth's orbit, were tempted to radio back, reporting the appearance of a black monolith. Over 11% of all Americans are infected with parasitic pinworms, which make your ass itch at night when they come crawling out of your anus to lay their eggs. This makes you scratch your ass and helps these sticky eggs spread, often to your own breakfast, thereby repeating the cycle. 2 students were arrested in 1972 for a plan to poison Chicago's water supply with typhoid, anthrax, and various other pathogens. Released on bond, they hijacked a plane and forced it to go to Cuba. One died in a prison and the other one eventually made it home, getting 5 years of probation. While millions of North Koreans starve, the nation's rulers have taken up the habit of having McDonald's hamburgers flown daily from China to Pyongyang on North Korea's national airline. Russian special services still use typewriters to avoid online surveillance. During nuclear testing in Los Alamos in the 50s, an underground test shot a 2-ton steel manhole cover into the atmosphere at 41 miles per second. It was never found. There is only one unsolved airline hijacking case in the history of the U.S. D.B. Cooper, the hijacker, parachuted out of the plane to an uncertain fate after receiving his demands, and was described as thoughtful and polite by his hostage. There are approximately 86 billion neurons in the human brain. The X-ray was invented by Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen in 1895. The human eyeball is 24.5 millimeters in long. Tarantulas and other spiders sense vibration with hairs on their legs. The average number of neocortical glial cells in young adults is 39 billion. In older adults, there are 36 billion glial cells.